who knows how Buick came to be the car that GM first started selling in China in 1998? Who knows that story? Anybody? Sorry?
James Mann.
Was that included in Beijing Jeep? It may have even been after that. But in any case, yeah, around 1995, I see the executives from General Motors and Ford both in the same hotel in Shanghai, and they're both dueling for the rights to do what? To partner with the city of Shanghai to build what was called a luxury car for China. There would be a new joint venture. It would be $1 billion joint investment, largest industrial investment in history in China by foreign companies. And GM and Ford were, as rivals in Detroit, were angling, how can we get an edge? What can we do to win the favor of Shanghai and be selected to be the partner in this important joint venture? So GM felt confident that they had the answer, and they they left the hotel, made a presentation to the Shanghai executives and said, we know exactly the right brand to launch in China. That's Chevrolet. You know, in America, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevy. It's every man and every woman's dream car. And we understand China would like to have cars for everybody too. So what we propose is that we go with Chevrolet. And what did the Chinese say? 不要. Chevrolet 不行. 不要. Don't want that one. The GM executives were startled. How can you not want Chevrolet? Well, we would like to have something a little bit more prestigious and more exclusive. After all, 1998, most of the buyers are high-ranking executives or party members or in the government. They need a big, nice sedan. GM guy goes, great, we got it. We know exactly what you're looking for. Cadillac. Exactly. Let's go with Cadillac. And the Chinese side goes, ooh, that's a little bit too expensive. We can't be seen as bourgeois or, too exclusive. So then at that point, the GM guys were saying, all right, we're in trouble here. We don't have any other option. We have, there's Chevy as our main. We have Cadillac, Oldsmobile, no. Pontiac, no. And then the Chinese said, you know what car we want? We want Buick. And the GM guys could not believe it. Buick? Seriously? Nobody wants Buick. Nobody. But the Chinese executive said yes, and for good reason. As many of us in the room know, the last emperor of China drove a Buick. So there was some real, genuine historical prestige and exclusivity related to the Buick brand. And it's with that they decided to go with the Buick brand and make the first vehicle a Regal, which was at the time was a $40,000 sedan. Now keep in mind, China in 1998, incomes were maybe on average, maybe $500 per head. And we're talking about a $40,000 car. Well, it was for the elites in society. All right. Fast forward to, what do I hit this one? Yeah. So we got the Buick, and that was in 1996 that GM was selected to be the partner. For the next year and a half, the two partners, Shanghai and GM, are working very hard to build a state-of-the-art factory, and all pointing to day one, when the production of the first vehicle, and if you're in the auto industry, day one is everything. It's like having a baby. The day one that car rolls, everything has to be perfectly aligned and meticulous and great. So in late December 1998, your typical Shanghai winter day, kind of wet, chilly, more than 1,000 people gathered inside the warm factory. It was brightly lit, brand new factory to witness the very first Buick Regal rolling off the line. How important was it? The mayor of Shanghai was there. The CEO of GM at the time, a guy named Jack Smith, was there too. And believe me, I knew the executive in charge at the time, Phil Murtaugh. For weeks beforehand, they had rehearsed this day. This day has to be perfect because it marks the start of this monumental joint venture between General Motors, the largest auto company in the world, and Shanghai, the leading commercial center. So They rehearsed it and rehearsed it and rehearsed it. And the way it was supposed to play out is that Jack Smith and the mayor would get in the car after it emerged off the line and drive it out of the factory to everyone's applause. Okay? In fact, I think we have a photo of it. Yeah, that's the original Regal coming through, you know, kind of a faux glass at the time. You can see the photographers there. After the Regal comes through that, it's parked. And the engineers who were driving it through that then wave to Jack Smith and the mayor and say, come on, guys, it's your turn. Now, of course, Jack Smith and the mayor hadn't rehearsed this, but they knew what they should do. So they got in the car, and everybody waited in anticipation for the car to roll through the factory and out the front door. And what happened? You weren't there. Yes, it's too long ago. Okay. So the car started, but it wouldn't move. And everybody's kind of like, okay, we see them in there. What are they doing? Let's move. It's like this. And Jack Smith later described the feeling of, I'm on the accelerator, the car's not moving, the parking brake's on. So the engineer had set the parking brake. And most Americans, I don't know, I'm from Detroit. Do we use a parking brake very often? No. So Jack Smith's there going, my car's not moving, parking brake's on, no problem, I got this. So he reaches down underneath and pulls the lever. And what happens? The hood pops up. Ah! This was really an embarrassing moment, of course. So the engineers scurried up and showed him where the proper latch was. He put the hood down, released the brake, they drove off. And later he said, hey, you know what, we Americans, we don't, it's just no big deal. But for the Chinese, a little bit unsettling. We just put $1 billion joint venture with you guys, and the chairman, the CEO, doesn't even know where the parking brake is. This is not an auspicious start. Okay? That was 20 years ago. Today, GM's a spectacular success in China. And I do have the words, you're not reading it wrong. It says pop quiz. And I know we're all smart in this room, so I thought it really good opportunity to give you all a pop quiz. So, what cars, what brands does China sell? Does GM sell in China today? Anybody?
Cadillac, Buick, Chevy, probably not Daewoo.
Not Daewoo, but Cadillacs, Chevy, Buick, and then some other Baojun and Wuling.
Yeah.
Yes, Daewoo's underpinning. So a whole host of, good answer. Second question, of all the vehicles that GM sold globally last year, which market did they sell the most in? US, Germany, Australia, China, Japan, what? China. China is today GM's biggest market. 43% of cars sold by GM last year were sold in the PRC. Okay. Third question. Of Buicks sold globally last year, what percentage were sold in China? Of all Buicks? 75, 80%. 75, good. You're disqualified. You can't answer. If it's too easy, don't answer, please. All right.
Yes, but that would make sense.
No, that's imagine.
Interviewed by CBS many years ago about why Buick was a luxury brand in China. So
Yes.
It's funny when you were talking about that.
Right, it is a luxury brand for sure. All right, so, and then what was the number one car exported to the United States from China last year? Number one car from China to the United States. And you're saying, there is no Chinese car on the road here, I think. But
Was it Volvo or CT6?
Buick Envision. Buick Envision is number one, Volvo number two, Cadillacs are now imported from China too. And last question, does GM make money in China or no? Today. Anybody know? Yes, no? Not sure? Okay, they do. They make a lot of money. They make, in recent years, they've consistently made about $2 billion in profits that they are able to repatriate to the United States. That was not a known thing back in 1998. I guarantee you. It was a big, risky investment, and people had no idea just how big it would get for GM. Okay, so that's just a little bit of appetizer on GM in China. Now let's pull the lens back a little bit and look at what I call the arc of wealth and power in China. So let's go back to the beginning. What did China want to, and thank you very much for that presentation, by the way, because it's a perfect scene setter. China has always wanted to have some wheels, and they've always had some foreigners going, I can do that, I can bring some cars here. So this is exactly where China found itself in 1980 when it started to open up, and it said, we want, Deng Xiaoping took a trip to Japan, the United States, came back from that trip and said, I see a strong correlation between wealthy countries and powerful auto industries. We want that. We want to have a car to call our own. And how are we going to get there? We're going to get there through joint ventures. We're going to invite global automakers to come into China. It'll be 50-50 by law. No foreign company can have more than 50%. Over time, we'll learn the technology, do it ourselves. All right? Why were the globals coming in? Why were the global automakers coming in? Do they want to give the technology to China? No, that's their jewels. They want the market. And the tensions that began in the early 80s still exist today. You've got Chinese wanting to secure the technology, and you have foreigners wanting to secure the market. In Chinese, 同床异梦, 对不对? Okay. So, and that's the movie we've all seen, right? So China wants the tech, foreigners want the market. Beijing Jeep. You know your description of these kits that were shipped over and then assembled? Well, in the first joint venture, that's exactly, 50 years later, that's exactly what was happening. Jeep was shipping, building its Jeep like that, tearing it down, putting it into a box, shipping it to China, and the joint venture was assembling it over in Beijing. The trouble with that, for Chrysler or AMC at the time, that was great business. They shipped the car to China and collected money for shipping it there. Then in the joint venture, they made money again when they sold the car. But for the Chinese, it was no good because, hey, we're paying for the components to come in. We're not learning anything, and you guys have the market, and this is not a good deal. So the foreigners had all the leverage at that time. So there's already some bad blood in the 80s and early 90s, some misgivings. The joint ventures were not getting along well. And a guy named Phil Murtaugh, who is the CEO of this new joint venture called Shanghai GM, said, hey, in order to make it a really successful joint venture, we need to be on the same page. We need to create a new kind of joint venture that puts the joint venture first. And this is Shanghai GM. It's an integration of SAIC, Shanghai Auto, and General Motors. If we don't put the joint venture first, it will dissolve or fall apart or have too many tensions like Beijing Jeep did. So he convinces Jack Smith, his boss back in Detroit, everybody inside the joint venture, we have to stick together to thrive. Okay? And it was largely embraced by both sides for a few years. Okay? One day, Phil Murtaugh comes to work, and GM had been developing a new car for China to succeed the Buick Regal. Buick Regal on the high end. GM wanted to bring a small, affordable car in that many more people could buy. And in order to get there, what they did is they acquired Daewoo and acquired the engineering for a new car that we know today is SGM Chevy Spark. Okay, so the launch date was in 2004, and at the 2003 auto show in Shanghai, Phil Murtaugh attends, he's walking through it, and he can't believe his eyes. He sees this car, the Cherry QQ. It's almost identical to the car that he's going to launch in 6 more months. And he thinks, this is physically impossible. They've copied the car before my car existed. Never before in the history of humanity has something so incredible happened. How did this happen? So he went on a war hunt and asked all the suppliers, what's going on? Did you hear about this car that's being sold here? That's a copy of our car that we didn't even make yet? And they said, yeah, we've been supplying them for a few months now. What? All right, so the backstory is while GM was in negotiation to acquire Daewoo out of Korea, engineers at Chery, which is a state enterprise in Anhui province, went to Korea and found a couple of people working at Daewoo and asked them, would it be possible for us to buy the drawings for that car? Out the side door, 后门可以吗? So 后门. And they did a deal. So Chery was able to secure the drawings for this car unbeknownst to GM and start developing it themselves. Now, what hurt Murtaugh even more was the fact that the major shareholder in Chery was SAIC. Whoa, okay, hang on, wait a second. The car's copied before it's made, and the major shareholder in the copier is my partner. How would you feel? Okay. All right, that's the second story. So you start to see that even in conditions where Shanghai GM is supposed to be one unified joint venture, everybody's on the same page, it's still sleeping in the same bed, dreaming different dreams. And the Chinese feel frustrated. Why is it that we're always catching up with the foreigners' technology? Why do we have to do that? That's no fun, play catch up. So in my mind in 2009, you have a major turning point in the perceptions of the Chinese as they view the world. And on two fronts. One, GM went into bankruptcy. So they said, I lost a lot of respect for this company. I thought they were the largest in the world. 10 years ago, they're the largest in the world. Now they're in bankrupt. And secondly, they said, instead of following technology, let's lead. So we begin to see in 2010, at the highest levels of leadership in China, a vision to say, we're not going to build gasoline or diesel engines. Why don't we build something no one else is building and we can lead in a technology of the future, not follow? Yeah. By 2015, they've further refined the plan, and we know this as Made in China 2025. Not only will they lead in EVs, but the ambition is to lead in AV technology, 5G, advanced manufacturing, robotics, you name it. So it's really accelerated in the last few years. And as we look at, this is for people who are, anybody here in the auto industry? Lot of names up there. The big idea is that initially China really relied on what we call the big six. Those are the state enterprises on the left-hand side. Shanghai Auto, Beijing Auto, Guangzhou Auto. They were depending on these companies to lead China to become a powerhouse auto industry. But after they had been depending on them since the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, they weren't seeing much innovation. They're disappointed. So in 2015, along with Made in China, they said, you know what, in order to lead, let's bring fresh blood in the industry. Let's bring the tech companies. They're smart, they're profitable, they're young, they're versatile. So that's exactly what they did. And they started to invite the Alibabas, Baidu's, Tencents, and others to invest directly in developing world-class, state-of-the-art electric autonomous vehicles. You guys with me still? Mm-hmm. Okay. Go faster, right? You guys are smart audience. Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba are really the leaders in this. If you look at investments, NIO, I'll get to in a second. Sorry. This is Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba. Still, though, the Chinese need to secure technology. They don't have it in their hands. The difference this time is that they're able to invest directly into Silicon Valley and hire the best and brightest tech people in the world. They don't need to rely on tech transfer from auto companies. They can go plug into that technology directly, and that's what they've done. My company surveyed the landscape and found by the end of last year there were over 100 Chinese auto and auto tech companies already operating in the United States under the radar screen, almost 50 of them right here in California. Why are they here? To get first-rate technology. They're hiring from Tesla, Google, Apple, and others. Here's a picture of several brand names and locations right here in California.
Are they get first-rate tech or first-rate talent?
Talent and tech. Both, yeah. So they have their own offices here where they're doing research, but they're also hiring, so both of those. And then bring it back, China. All right, if you're thinking about, well, where is this leading? No better example than this. This is the Neo ES8. In China, it's known as a Tesla fighter. It costs about $65,000 to start. It's all electric, very fast. It goes 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. It has an AI assistant. You see this up here? That's Nomi, an AI assistant that responds to voice commands. So if you want to open the sunroof, change the air conditioning, put the radio on, you can speak to her in Chinese and she answers immediately. I've done it a few times. It's very impressive. Neo is not the only company. There's a couple other to watch already. One's called Byton, and that's short for Bytes on Wheels, in recognition of the fact that the car of the future is a computer on wheels. And then already here in Los Angeles, there's a company called Karma that used to be Fisker Automotive, electric car maker. You can see them on the road here. So this isn't imaginary, or maybe 10 years from now. China already has the capability to build highly advanced electric and autonomous vehicles. When they're not developing their own or hiring talent or developing their own technology, Chinese companies are more apt to buy than, say, their Japanese or Korean predecessors. So some of the names here, we all know that China now owns Volvo. How many of us knew that Pirelli is a Chinese brand? Huh? How about the fact that KUKA, one of the top 3 robotics companies in the world, is Chinese-owned? The #1 shareholder in Mercedes-Benz, Daimler, is Geely. #1 shareholder. The Germans cannot believe this. Is this possible? Wait, Beijing Jeep? Whoa. Things are really accelerating. And then many people speculating right now that FCA will be the next acquisition because the Chinese love the Jeep brand, and SUVs are a huge market in China. Okay, which brings us back to who would be the guy on the left? Yeah, okay. Mr. Xi, and the guy on the right, Mr. Trump. The overlay here, what we're really talking about is that from the very beginning, the reason I wrote this book, American Wheels, Chinese Roads, is I felt by looking at China through the lens of a joint venture, we can really begin to understand how the two countries and how the two corporate cultures interact. And more importantly, we can get a glimpse into which side has more leverage, because it is a leverage game at the end of the day. And as with regards to the auto industry, China definitely enjoys size. It's the #1 market in the world by far. Production, #1 producer of vehicles by far. And even arguably in these tech industries, last year China produced 60% of all electric vehicles in the world, 60%. By 2025, that number will probably still be around 50 or 60%. Tesla's moving in there, Mercedes, Audi. Really, China enjoys tremendous momentum. What's still missing a little bit, or the one part of the equation that's not set, is will China, as was the case so many years ago, continue to import and assemble technology from overseas, or will they develop their own? And if they develop their own, suddenly it's game over for Europe and the United States. The center of the global auto industry will be planted right in China for 50 to 100 years to come. Okay, that's what we're looking at.